right, we're ready to go with our last presentation of the day, Lessons from the Field. So Stephen Smith was born and raised in Minnedosa, Manitoba, and in 1995 he began his ag career driving an NH3 truck, floaters and sprayers. He graduated agribusiness at the Assiniboine Community College in 2001 and was an agronomist, and agro-manager for the co-op in Neepawa for 15 years. Then Nutrien in Carberry as a crop production advisor for the next 5 years. In 2024, Stephen started his agronomy business looking after approximately 50,000 acres in the Westman area. Welcome, Stephen.
Thanks, guys. So it wouldn't be an Ag Days if we didn't have a punch in the face, 50 mile an hour, minus 50 temperature out there. So here we go. So, as some of you know, I'm a resident of Jamaica as well as a citizen of Canada. I started traveling to Jamaica in my college days, chasing girls. I built a home in Negril in about 2010 and married a Jamaican girl soon after. This past summer, my wife and son moved to Canada, so all of a sudden, bang, I'm the daddy of an 8-year-old boy. So, let me get my little clicker here. So this is a view from my house in Jamaica, and this is where I happened to be sitting when Kristen had sent me an email to do a presentation at Ag Days here. Seemed like a great idea at the time. Anything sounds like a great idea in Jamaica. So when I get home and things get closer, the panic starts to set in, realizing never done this before. My computer skills from 1985 playing Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego probably aren't going to do me a lot of help here. So a panic Facebook post went out looking for somebody to do the PowerPoint for me. All worked out, we got it. So a little bit of history. Kristen Phillips, the president of Ag Days. I'd been dealing with Kristen for, I'd like to say 15 to 20 years, but it's probably been closer to 20 to 25. Her and her son, or her and her husband, sold them chemical and seed for the last 20 years or so. We've developed a good working relationship. That's how I got sucked into this. So if something goes wrong, I'm going to make it easy. I'm just going to fake a heart attack and get the heck out of here. I can see a couple of them in the room. But I have the pleasure of working with a couple of big colonies in the Westman area. Through this, I get to meet with Myers, Norris, and Penny many times throughout the year. And it's no surprise to anybody that Myers, Norris, and Penny is by far the biggest accounting firm for farms in Western Canada. And with this amount of data, some interesting information comes out. Was in a meeting last spring out at Rolling Acres Colony at Eden, and this came up. According to Myers, Norris, and Penny, what is the #1 yield robber in Western Canada? Delayed planting date. Never would have thought that would have been the answer. So this handsome boy here on my right, that's my 1.5-year-old, 200-pound Neapolitan Mastiff. He's one of 20 that I own between two countries. Oh, sorry. So, I was born and raised in Minnedosa. I started in the crop input business in '95. That was about the time that we started to see all these young people come out of college. They were called agronomists. We never really knew what they were or what they did, but boy, it looked attractive. Driving around in half tons, air conditioning on, scouting fields on quads. I thought, you know what, this is probably a better idea than being a sprayer operator for the rest of my life. So I took the opportunity in 2000 and went back to ACC, Graduated from the agribusiness program in 2001. From there, I spent 17 years with a co-op in Nipawin as an agronomist and agro-manager. From there, I did 5 years with Nutrient out of Carberry as a crop production advisor. And in 2024, I started my own agronomy business. My business, what I do fertility planning and budgets, soil testing, crop scouting, manure management, input budgets and record keeping, and input purchasing. With 30 years in the crop inputs business, there's not a whole lot I haven't dealt with, so there's not a whole lot of secrets to be had. My area, I work from Minnedosa to Gladstone, north to Mountain Road, and south to Brookdale. I look after 50,000 acres, and I've got farms ranging in size from 350 acres to 25,000 acres, everything in between. This is just a pic off my Ag Scouter field scouting app that just shows all the fields that I deal with. Again, my computer skills kind of left me here, and we ended up with a bit of a dog's breakfast, but it gives you an idea of the areas I'm involved in. Minnedosa's here, Nipawin's here, Eden's there, and the town of Brookdale down at the bottom. Why hire an independent agronomist? We work directly for the farmers, not a retail business. Time restraints in retail don't allow for proper service. I think it's a bit of an illusion, and after 30 years in the business, I'm quite aware of this. There's not a lot of money made in the crop input business anymore. It's not like it was in the 90s and the early 2000s where these businesses are making 10, 20% gross margin. It's just not there anymore. Their job is to sell you product. I have no hidden agendas, and my success is based purely on your success. If you don't do well, I won't be there very long. It's as simple as that. So we're going to just look at some of the weather conditions that we had this past year. And I just thought this would be a nice lead up. With owning a home and living part-time in Jamaica, we had a Category 5 hurricane go through at the end of October. It was the biggest recorded hurricane in the Caribbean since the dawn of time. So it was really something else. And can somebody play this, or can I play this? Or this was live as the hurricane was going. Can we get a volume with that? Or not. But it was absolutely devastating. I was one of the only ones in Jamaica at the time with Starlink as far as internet service go. So I was able to watch this in real time as it was happening. You know, I had friends send me pictures, houses upside down, houses tore apart, roofs tore apart. It was really something. So let's talk about Westman. What was our weather last year? Seeding started early. We had good moisture conditions from the previous fall. We had no measurable rains after seeding, but emergence was very good. Stayed dry through late May and early June, and then a crop-saving rain in mid-May and into June. In July, the rains disappeared until August. Harvest started a little on the late side. We were into September, and then was delayed for a couple of weeks for rain. We didn't get started again until almost October, and finishing in mid-October. Above average rain in October and November finished the year off well, so we should be starting next year well with good moisture conditions. Some crop-specific results. So, wheat and barley was an excellent growing season for growing cereals. Good early season moisture and timely rains got the crop off to a good start. Most of the cereals got sprayed with fungicide, even though the pressure wasn't really there. Come harvest time, we saw higher than average yields. We saw wheat coming off between 65 and 100, and we saw barley coming off anywhere from 100 to 130 bushels per acre. Biggest challenges in cereals last year, going back to the same old thing, wild oat resistance. In the tests that I do, we're seeing regularly tests come back with 80 to 90% resistance to both group 1s and group 2s. We used to see a lot more on the group 1 side. Now we're seeing equal numbers on both sides. So we wonder why these products aren't working. This is why these products aren't working. So to combat this, I've made a conscious effort to incorporate pre-plant microactives like Fortress and Avidex. There's also a new liquid version of Avidex out now, which can, in some cases, make your life easier. In almost all cases, we're not just depending on that microactive, we're following up with an in-crop wild oat product. In cases where pre-plant applications aren't possible for whatever reasons, tillage, what I like to do when the population's high, bump those rates up. I've seen too many cases where we're going through at label rate and it's falling apart on us. So in heavy situations, most of the time I'm going 1.2x to 1.25x the rate on a product like Axial. About the only other big issue we're seeing in wheat, and it's nothing compared to the wild oats, is kochia resistance. In tests that went in throughout this past year, glyphosate resistance is well over 80% on kochia. So to be out there in the spring spraying Roundup, no matter what your rate is, chances are you're wasting your time. The other mainstay for kochia in cereals has always been Floxapure. That's going back to the Dow days. Most of the resistance tests now are coming back resistant to Floxapure. So where do we go from here? Another issue we're having in wheat, lodging under high fertility. Most of us now realistically are gunning for 70, 80, 90 bushel wheat crops. Those are requiring anywhere from 140 to 160 pounds of N, some cases higher. It's creating the perfect storm for lodging. All it takes is one rain at heading time and it's laying down on us. We all know what happens when wheat crops lodge. The yield gets cut. So how I'm addressing it is this little baby from Nutrien, ESN. And basically what it is urea wrapped in a plastic polymer, which delays the availability of that nitrogen a minimum of 50 to 60 days. I think in a lot of their data, they're basically working on 50% release by day 50 and the other 50% after day 50. So rather than loading up front on the nitrogen, having lodging come into play, this is the avenue we've been taking, and it really seems to be working. So in most cases, what we're working on is 25% of your N as ESN. What we're seeing is far less chance of lodging, while in most cases, increasing yields and increasing proteins. I'm seeing yield increases between 5 and 9 bushels on cereal, and protein increases from 0.5 to 1%. I physically took a lot of these tests in myself because I wanted to see the results. It was very consistent. I don't think I took in one test where the ESN protein level wasn't better and the yield wasn't better. And this is comparing 120 pounds of N to 120 pounds of N. So all we've done is taken 30 pounds out of the upfront application, added it in the seed row, and here we are. The biggest obstacle we ran into was a lot of single shoot carts out there. So wheat going on at 2.5 bushels, we've basically tied up 150 pounds of product going through that drill. These drills are only capable of putting out 250 pounds in total fertilizer and seed. So that's the biggest issue we ran into was, yes, we could accommodate the ESN and the phosphate, but we're starting to run out of room for if a guy does need to add potash or if for some reason you're adding sulfur. So we're going to have to come up with a way to alleviate that issue. What we're going to do going forward into this year is start preloading some of that potash into canola. You know, we don't have near the rates of fertilizer going down with canola or the canola seed, so that's the approach we're going to take going forward. Soybeans. Now, Westman, soybeans hasn't been a mainstay for us in the past 15 years. We first started to see soybeans come out mid-2000s. Those were the varieties like the M2s, the Y4s. Right off the bat, we had a lot of guys jump in, and you know what? The first couple of years, we had really good success with soybeans. We had yields 45 bushel plus, and then reality started to sink in. All of a sudden, our soybean yields started to decrease significantly as the yield started to come back to more of a 30, 35 bushel to the acre crop. But 2025 was a great year to grow soybeans. At planting time, the moisture was good. We had no emergence issues and basically gave the soybeans everything they needed in the growing season. We didn't have a lot of moisture during the flowering period, so most beans didn't get sprayed with a fungicide. I think we've all been tossing up whether fungicide actually pays or not in soybeans. Well, if we don't have the conditions to start in the flowering period, it just wasn't something I was going to spend money on. We did end up seeing some late white mold infections, but it seemed to be very variety specific. I won't mention the variety, but there was one variety out of every bean I had a grower grow that seemed to have the white mold infection. Everything else was clean. Soybean yields this year ended up very good, anywhere from 45 to 65 bushels, which we haven't seen. To make soybeans attractive and to start trying to replace some canola acres, we've got to be above 45 bushels. Oh. Canola. Canola's been a staple in our farms now for 30, 40 years. I think everybody can agree that canola has probably been the most profitable crop on the farm over the last 30 years or so. Problem is, since the mid-2000s, we've really seen canola yields flatline. We've seen all these new great varieties come through. We've seen all this technology come through, but we haven't seen the yield increases we've been expecting. I think a lot of us expected by the year 2025, the way things were going 15 years ago, we were going to hit 75 bushel canola. We haven't got there. So, for the most part, canola emergence was very good. We had some issues on the light land because of lack of moisture, but that wasn't a lot of acres in general. Flea beetles really didn't seem to be a problem this year unless the canola was stressed. What we saw, there was a little bit of crusting due to hard ground. The flea beetles attacked there. We had about an inch rain shot come through. I'm going to say it was about the 14th of May. My advice at that point was, get the canola in. Get the canola in. We don't know when we're going to be able to get back on these fields, so let's get it in. It was a mistake. What we saw was the buteo wash-off. So the insecticide treatment that most of us are using now is buteo start. It's a water-soluble insecticide. So if we go ahead and sow that canola, we get over an inch of rain, what's happening is that insecticide is actually washing off the seed. So we're sitting there with unprotected canola plants until the roots develop and are able to pick that insecticide back up. So we saw massive attack on stressed canola due to buteo wash-off. Our biggest yield robber this year, verticillium. and I'm sure everybody's getting sick of hearing about verticillium, but you're going to hear about it again. Verticillium stripe is a soil-borne disease in canola discovered in about 2014. What it does is destroys the vascular tissue, prevents water and nutrients from being taken to the roots up into the plant where they're needed. This causes premature ripening and severely impacts yield. In my area, we really hadn't seen verticillium to a point where it was a noticeable problem for probably 5 or 6 years. We had an incident 7, 8 years ago where it really came to light, but we'd been back to, the standard, what all the experts are saying, probably 10, maybe 15% yield loss at that point, not terribly significant, but still enough that it was a light bulb on. In my area, I had fields where I went out and scouted. We had a 90% infection rate on verticillium. 9 out of 10 stalks that you'd count had severe symptoms. The symptoms started to be visible in later July and progressively got worse. By this point, we could clearly see some hotspot areas. We had a corridor along 16 Highway from Minnedosa to Gladstone. It ran east and west and branched out about 3 miles on either side of 16 Highway. And I kind of jokingly called it Verticillium Alley. It was sickening to drive down 16 Highway. You could see it get worse and worse every day. Once you got out of the area, yeah, you could pick out a field here, you could pick out a field there, but nothing like what I've seen along the highway. Is this telling us something? I don't know. We still know so little about this disease, it's scary. So, making the verticillium situation even worse, we're seeing a lot of compounding diseases. And I think that's more why we saw the bigger yield effect this year. We're not only seeing verticillium, we're seeing verticillium in combination with blackleg and in combination with sclerotinia. I saw yields as low, and this is across 1,000 acres of canola on a farm, as low as 25 bushels to the acre. And these were crops, I swore, going into fungicide season, we got a whopper here, guys. We got this 60 bushels beat. Not so. Sorry. Answers aren't coming anytime soon. Go to any meeting with the scientists that are looking into verticillium. We're still in the stage where we don't even know about the disease. We don't know how it's working. As a grower, please be aware, marketing has really taken over the seed business in the past year because of verticillium. I'm seeing a lot of claims made of varieties that are more resistant to verticillium than other varieties. How can you make a claim of better resistance to a disease you don't even understand at this point? I mean, take blackleg, for example. It took us over 20 years to develop anything that was going to work on blackleg. We're in infancy in verticillium. We don't know. So watch the marketing. The marketing, for some reason, seems to have got ahead of the research in this. So from there, we're going to go to what we're seeing as far as soil tests goes. So I do about 200 soil tests a year, which isn't as much as some of the companies out there, but it's enough to start to see trends within certain crops in my area. So cereals, not surprisingly, the soil tests are showing very low N in most cases. I mean, we had a record year as far as growing cereals, pulling off these 70, 80, 90 bushel wheat crops, 100 plus bushel barley crops. What I'm seeing, and this is an example, this is a pretty general example of what I'm seeing coming off a cereal crop this year. 24 pounds of nitrogen, basically it's empty. I'm not going to get into phos, potassium, sulfur. We all know phos is a measure of what you've put in the past years. We're going to more just look at nitrogen and what's left in that department. Canola, here we have a different story, and this surprised me, and it probably shouldn't have. This is kind of a unique soil test. This is a grower I have who's about 72 years old. He's down to farming 3/4, and he wants to hit a home run before he retires. So he's flogging 175, 180 pounds of N, 50 pounds of P, 25 pounds of S. He's really just wants to do it that one time. Well, what have we got left? We've got 91 pounds of nitrogen left in the ground. I would say that paid for the $200 soil test. Realistically, to grow from there, say a 75 bushel wheat crop, you're probably looking at only needing to put on 60, 70 pounds of N. So this is a trend that I'm really seeing in canola this year, and it's showing up in all my soil tests. This is a more realistic and more general soil test of what I'm seeing left out there after canola. 46 pounds in the top 24. That seems to be about the average of what I'm seeing coming off canola. So is it totally depleted? No, it's not. And we know with nitrogen, if we don't use it up this year, it's not going to stick around. It's not like phos where it binds to the clay particles, never to move. It's going to be there for next year. Nitrogen is not going to be there for next year, so use what you've got. Summary, 2025 was yet another year for the record books. Cereals, yield, quality, and protein were above average. Split N applications with ESN seemed to achieve what we set out to. Not a lot of disease to speak of. Soil test levels are showing low residual N levels. In soybeans, highest bean yields we've seen in the Westman area this year. Some cases, late white mold infection, but again, seemed to be very variety specific and didn't really affect the yield as much as it did the quality. Canola was scary. Highest amount of verticillium I've seen in the area. We're seeing fields with blackleg and or sclerotinia in combination with verticillium. Yields were lower than expected. Seed marketing making claims of better verticillium resistance. Soil tests showing higher than average N levels. So these are the three companies that I work with. AgVise Laboratories, I do all my soil testing through AgVise. AgVise has been a staple for us for 40 years. They do more soil testing for our area than any other company, so I would rather hang my hat on their advice than some of these other companies. Ag Scouter, that is a company out of Saskatchewan that has developed a software for scouting. When I was starting to go into business for myself, one of the major things was record keeping from in the field. Ag Scouter has a more user-friendly platform than anything I could find out there. Any of the others, the Trimbles, yes, they had their good points, but they also had their bad points, especially as far as recommendations. I wanted something easy where I didn't have to figure out ounces per acre, milliliters per acre. I want to know acres per jug. I want to make it easy for the farmer. And Ag Scouter goes through the entire crop protection book every year, makes updates, and their recommendation tools are very easy. Everything is just a pick and play, and it's worked out great for me. Anybody's interested, by all means take a picture of the QR code and have a look. The other retail that I work very closely with, just the nature of my business. If I need bug sprayed, I need fungicide sprayed, and I need it sprayed in a hurry, Western Canadian Aerial has been great with that. So yeah, I appreciate everybody's help. Any questions?
Any questions? I can rip up there with a mic.
Charlotte Crawley.
I don't need the mic, that's okay. I was just kind of curious if you've seen any trends. You mentioned chemical-resistant kochia.
Yep.
Have you seen any trends towards guys leaning more towards establishing forage in those areas? It seems to be like a real.
And honestly, Charlotte, we've got a lot of these areas that that would be an option. We just haven't found an economical way to do it. How do we make money on forages seems to be the major issue. And it's the same with some of our salinity areas. Yes, we know we're wasting money trying to put inputs into this land to try and grow a crop in these areas. Forages is probably a far better option. How do we make money doing it?
Any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you very much, Stephen. Great presentation. Thank you very much.